intensity. Boy, I miss the point.
Hello YouTube, BenB998 here, and welcome to Looking Back, a retrospective series where we look back at games I personally grew up playing and see how well they hold up today. In today's episode, we will be revisiting 007 Nightfire, released in 2002 and published by EA for the PlayStation 2, GameCube, PC, and original Xbox. 007 Nightfire was a FPS where you were put into the shoes of the world-famous Agent 007 James Bond, and more specifically, Pierce Brosnan's James Bond. Nightfire was one of the earlier games that used the likeness of real actors to bring the game to life. Though Brosnan provided his likeness, he did not provide his voice for the game. Instead, actor Maxwell Caulfield voiced the secret agent. 007 Nightfire has 12 main story missions in which you shoot and stealth your way through a variety of locales such as Paris, Austria, and Tokyo. As Bond, you will work with a selection of firearms and gadgets to help you complete these missions, such as your faithful Wolfram silenced pistol, a watch laser, and even a bomb disguised as a shaver. Though most of the game is an FPS like I said before, players will on occasion engage in car missions where you must use car gadgets, mounted machine guns, and guided rockets to finish off your enemies and race to the objective. There are also a variety of on-rails shooting segments that test your aim and reaction time. Now on to the story. If you don't want any story spoilers for a 20-year-old game and plan on playing this yourself, skip to the timestamp shown on screen right now, or click on the timestamp in the description. Alright, sticking around? Cool. Let's talk story. The game starts off with Agent 007 aiding French intelligence operative Dominique Paradis in stopping a stolen nuclear weapon set to blow up the Eiffel Tower in Paris on New Year's Eve. This mission acts as a prologue as well as a mini tutorial to help ease new players into the game. As Bond, players start the mission as an on-rails shooter in a helicopter protecting Dominique's car from threats with a tactical sniper. This mission took me a few tries due to the fact when aiming the sniper there is no aim assist with the controller and the helicopter isn't the most stable thing to aim at. After Bond successfully protects Dominique's getaway, he drops himself into her car and they transfer into Bond's custom 2002 Aston Martin Vanquish to catch up to the truck holding the stolen nuclear weapon.
The name's Bond. James Bond.
The vehicle controls in Nightfire are actually very reactive to the player input and very much like an arcade racer in terms of the steering and acceleration controls. After shooting some baddies and catching up to the truck, Bond shoots the truck with an EMP to defuse the weapon and sends the truck safely into the river, saving New Year's Eve in Paris. Oh, and I should mention getting some action with the lovely Dominique.
Happy New Year indeed, Dominique.
This brings up one complaint I have with the story, but I will discuss that later once we have some more context. Shortly after returning to base, Agent 007 is contacted by M, his boss, and is informed that the missile guidance chip, intended for the Space Defense Program, a new militarized space station built by the United States, has been stolen by a company known as Phoenix International, owned by a man named Raphael Drake. The man who stole the chip, Alexander Mayhew, is due to bring the chip to Drake during a party in Austria set within a castle. Bond is then dropped off right outside the castle, and this is where the second mission begins. This mission is my favorite mission in the game for two reasons. The first reason is that you have many ways to tackle it. You can go in guns blazing, killing every guard and going full genocidal maniac, or you can sneak in without being seen with minimal to zero casualties. Funny enough, the first part of this mission can be finished with minimal effort. A truck comes along shortly after the mission begins, and if you wait for that truck to pull up underneath you, you can just hop right into the bed of the truck and let it take you straight into the second part of the mission. Anyway, once you get through the outer walls and the inner courtyards, you sneak into Drake's party disguised as a guest and search around for Mayhew and Drake. Shortly after entering the party, Bond meets up with Zoe Nightshade, a CIA agent that has been sent to assist with the recovery of the chip. At the same time as meeting up with Zoe, Bond surprisingly runs into Dominique once again, learning she is working undercover as Raphael Drake's mistress. Bond continues his way through the party after splitting up with the two agents and reaches the meeting room where Drake and Mayhew are discussing a secret project codenamed Nightfire, as well as learning Agent Nightshade had been captured since the split.
I was looking for the powder room.
Is lockpicks and a 9mm?
Hey, it's a tough neighborhood.
The rest of the mission from here is pretty much a run and gun type of mission, rescuing Agent Nightshade and recovering the chip from a storage room. Once Nightshade and the chip are safe, Bond escapes with Agent Nightshade on a gondola leading out of the castle. But they are soon intercepted by Rook, Drake's lead of security, flying on an attack helicopter. This is the game's first boss fight, and a very easy one at that. All the player needs to do is use the provided guided rocket launcher and shoot Rook out of the sky before he takes your health down to 0. After a cutscene where Rook explodes with a helicopter and agents Bond and Nightshade escape,
I thought you'd never ask.
Mission 2 is complete, though in said cutscene, this happens.
Nice landing, James. Why do you always seem to end up on top?
A lower center of gravity?
Yes, once again Bond gets laid, this time by Agent Nightshade. More about this later. Mission 3 of the campaign is short and sweet. Drake's men catch up to Bond and Nightshade, and the pair decide to borrow a armored jet ski with a mounted gun attached. Long story short, this mission is a short on-rails shooter. Agent Nightshade drives as the player shoots any enemies that come their way, plain and simple. After about 5 minutes of this, the agents escape in fashion. Now here's where I want to stop and mention something that you may notice as I explain the story of Nightfire. Some of the missions are long and pretty story-filled, however some missions like the one I just explained are what I would call filler missions. These missions are more like interactive set pieces than actual missions. These could have easily been covered by a simple cutscene or recap, but instead are put into short mini-games of sorts. They may have done this just to make the game longer, since without them I think this game would have been half the length it actually is. So moving forward, I may skip over some of these filler missions as I do not believe they are really worth talking about. Alright, back to the story. After the jet ski mission, Agents Bond and Nightshade rest at a rendezvous point for the night. Or as discussed in the cutscene, just bang on.
I don't recall getting much rest at all, James.
Are you noticing a pattern? Yeah, this game has a lot of interactions between Bond and his female companions. Anyway, Drake's men once again catch up to the agents, and Bond and Nightshade escape in the Aston Martin. Another short car mission happens, and then the two escape via helicopter. Another filler mission. At this point, we're pretty much at the halfway point of the main story. Yes, we are already halfway there. Bond is sent alone to Japan to extract Mayhew, who is now cooperating with MI6. Here we meet a very important character, Kiko, Mayhew's one and only bodyguard.
This is Kiko Hayashi, my bodyguard. I assure you, she's quite skilled.
The first part of this mission is a straightforward escort mission where players must take Mayhew to his secret bunker while being swarmed by Drake's men. As a kid when I first played this game, this mission was one of my favorites, but not because of the story or objective, but because of the environment. Mayhew's estate is a gorgeous Japanese-style house complete with a zen garden and a bathhouse. Even replaying this mission brought back those same feelings I had as a kid. After taking Mayhew to his bunker, Bond is tasked to clear the way for him to the exit, as well as retrieving important files from his safe.
The dragon. Right. Keep your head down. I'll be back for you.
The safe is hidden behind a riddle, which is very clear once you read it, so it's not too hard of a riddle. Once players finish this portion of the mission, a cutscene triggers where Bond and Mayhew are ambushed by a ninja, and Mayhew is killed.
Wait here.
Let's get moving.
After the second boss fight of the game, Mayhew, dying, tells Bond that Drake must be stopped and that he should go to Drake's offices in Tokyo.
Phoenix building in Tokyo. Tokyo? You'll need the password to the mainframe. It's Afterburn.
The next two missions have the player visiting Phoenix Tokyo offices and a decommissioned nuclear power plant alongside Kiko, gathering information and evidence to use against Drake so they can take him out for being an international terrorist. Both of these missions have you either stealthing or shooting your way through large open maps completing objectives. Nothing crazy or super important happens in these missions other than gathering evidence against Drake, so I'm going to skip the details here. After Bond gathers all of the evidence he needs, Kiko betrays 007, brings him to Drake.
You must be exhausted, James. What would you say to a little nap?
When Bond arrives at Drake's residence, Dominique is exposed as a spy helping Bond and is executed right in front of the agent.
Eyes to watch them. Like the hidden camera in the stairwell leading to the helipad.
I don't understand, Raphael.
Bond then escapes and is rescued by Australian intelligence agent Allura McCall. You guessed it, another love interest.
Need a lift, Mr. Bond? Allura McCall, Australian intelligence.
Here we enter the end stretch of the main story, which honestly is not only the most frustrating portion of the game, but it is also the most straightforward one. First, players will control a submarine form of the Aston Martin and sneak into Drake's secret island base. This mission infuriated me. The mission is a solid 10 to 15 minutes long with 0 checkpoints. Near the end of the mission, there is a boss fight against a submarine that one-shots you if you get too close, and because there are no checkpoints, if players die during this fight, they must restart from the beginning of the mission, meaning 10 to 15 more minutes of the same damn thing. Amazing. After Bond and McCall make landfall, they hijack an armored truck and move further into the island. Once again, another mission with 0 checkpoints and harsh combat conditions.
Code accepted.
Part 2 of the mission is another on-rails shooter set piece which has very few checkpoints. Once Bond and McCall successfully infiltrate the base under the island, McCall stays behind and lets Bond infiltrate stealthily alone.
Inform MI6 of our location. I'll be in touch, Allura.
Now this mission can be a lot of fun, but only if you know what you're doing. Players must do this stealthily during the first part or else they must restart from the beginning. Once players finish part 1, it's open season since part 2 is a run and gun segment. Bond reaches the door to the inner sanctum and a familiar face ambushes Bond. It's Rook, Drake's head of security, who Bond supposedly killed during the second mission of the game. Rook acts like a special enemy this time, not necessarily a boss fight. He acts like a normal soldier, but with a lot more health and throwing insults towards Bond the entire fight. When players take down Rook, they can now move into the inner sanctum. After fighting through dozens of enemies in the inner sanctum, Bond finally reaches the passenger rockets in the middle of the facility. There, Bond runs into Kiko, who is about to shoot off to the space station where Project Nightfire is. Here, players will engage in a gimmick boss fight. It's more of a mini gauntlet than a boss fight. Players can't attack Kiko directly since she's hiding behind bulletproof glass. Instead, she sends out waves of enemies to do her bidding and kill Agent 007. Once players kill about 2 or 3 waves of enemies and avoiding environmental attacks under the escape rockets, Kiko tries to escape, and with a simple press of the button, Bond exacts his revenge and drops Kiko off a walking platform to her death. Bond then hops into one of the remaining passenger rockets and makes his way to the space station where Drake plans to activate Project Nightfire.
I suppose I'm rising to the occasion.
Now it's time for the final boss fight. Bond finds himself outside the space station in a zero-gravity gimmick boss fight. Instead of attacking Drake directly, players must destroy the rockets before they launch, damaging the space station instead of the rockets hurtling towards the Earth. This fight was quite fun yet difficult since players have to fly around avoiding fire from Drake's men while at the same time trying to destroy the rockets before the timer runs out. Once the rockets are destroyed, the space station is destroyed as well as Drake, and Bond returns to the Earth.
Or is it stirred, not shaken?
In the ending cutscene, Agents Bond and McCall share a kiss on the Aston Martin, and the credits begin to roll.
Oh, James.
The main story took me about 6 to 7 hours to finish, and as I recorded footage and played through the game for this video, I have to say the game has held up pretty well for the most part. Graphically, the game is pretty dated, though some of the environments still look gorgeously put together. I noticed a lot of pop-in and graphical glitches since the power of the GameCube in the early 2000s wasn't nearly as advanced as consoles are nowadays, but nothing game-breaking. Really, the only major complaint during my time revisiting Nightfire was the checkpoint system. During some levels, checkpoints seemed forgiving and fair, but during some of the longer, more complicated levels, checkpoints felt far and fewer in between, which became very frustrating. When it comes to the story, I thought it was alright, but one thing bugged me throughout it, and that was the romantic, if you could even call it romantic, bits. I understand 007 is supposed to be a suave ladies' man, but when every cutscene has him and a female agent leading to implied sexual advance or innuendos, it feels extremely forced. Just something I found really distracting and kind of cringy in the story. Before I end this video, there is one more thing we need to talk about, and that's the multiplayer mode. The multiplayer mode in 007 Nightfire is what I grew up playing with friends all night long during sleepovers and other get-togethers. There are many game modes you would find in most FPS games, such as King of the Hill, Deathmatch, Team Deathmatch, but what me and my friends would always do is Team Deathmatch, 6v6 against bots, and just camp with snipers on rooftops and play the game like a shooting gallery and make up our own scenarios of why our characters were in these situations. So many fun memories stem from playing Nightfire multiplayer with friends that I will never forget. And so ends episode 1 of Looking Back. I really hope you guys loved this sort of video. In the next Looking Back, I will be covering an RTS that got me into the game genre and it is very underappreciated in my eyes. I hope you guys really look forward to it. If you did like the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.